Pick it up. That bill is more than your kind earns in a day using your hands, let alone your head. Marcus,
trap.
please.
They're coming
His
for
daughter
you.
is right
Get out
there.
of here.
A daughter? The man kneels at my antique board like he is praying to it. Maybe he thinks the little one can eat the pieces. And then the laughter, the kind
really
that travels
are
across a
quite
marble
useless,
floor
aren't
and
you?
finds a child's ears. Careful, Diana. Maybe the man plays.
$1
Plays. Fine. One
million.
game. He beats me. I write him a check for $1 million. He loses. He clears out his locker, takes his kid, and never sets foot on my property again. Mrs. Calloway, please. I am asking you as a father. Then your fingers should stay off things that cost more than your life. Daddy, it is okay, baby. You hear that, everyone? The handyman accepts. Somebody set up the board. This will not take long. You are right about that, ma'am. It will not. 9 moves later, the woman laughing loudest would lose everything. So let me ask you something before we go any further. Have you ever been laughed at by someone who had no idea who you really were? Have you ever stood still and swallowed it? Because somewhere behind you, there was a small person watching to see what you would do. To understand what happened in that ballroom, you have to go back, past the party, past the bet, into the life that built a quiet man named Marcus Reed, Aspen, Colorado. The Sterling Vance estate sat at the end of a private mountain road behind iron gates that opened only for people who mattered. 14 bedrooms, a ballroom with 3 chandeliers, a heated garage full of cars that never touched real snow. Diana Vance, 52 years old, had built a $4 billion investment fund the way other people build a reputation for cruelty. She read people. She found the soft place. She pressed until they folded. The financial papers called her a closer. She framed the word and hung it in her office. But money was never really the point for Diana Vance. Power was. She collected the things other people wanted. Paintings, watches that cost more than houses, and people, especially people. The kind who learned to laugh half a second early at her jokes, the way employees laugh at a boss who signs their checks. She liked an audience when she won. The truth is, she needed one. And moving quietly through all that marble and money was a man named Marcus Reed. Marcus kept the estate running. He was the one who fixed the boiler at 6 in the morning before anyone woke, who coaxed the temperamental old elevator back to life, who knew which window stuck in the cold and which pipe groaned before it burst. He had worked the property for 4 years. He drove up the mountain in a truck older than his daughter and drove home in the dark. His hands were scarred from engines and cold metal. His back ached in ways he never mentioned to anyone. He was 36 years old, and to the people who lived in that house, he was furniture that happened to walk. Diana Vance never called him by name. She called him the handyman. When something broke, it was his fault. When nothing broke, nobody thanked him. He took it. Not because he had no pride. He had a great deal of pride, folded up small and kept somewhere safe. He took it because pride does not pay rent in a mountain town where the rich have priced the workers halfway down the valley. And because there was someone counting on him. Once, a guest knocked an imported vase off a hallway table, and it shattered on the stone. Diana billed Marcus for it, took it straight out of his pay without a word. He found out at the bank, staring at a number that did not make sense. He came back the next morning anyway, on time, because that was the job, and the job was the whole plan, and the plan had a name. Her name was Naomi Reed, 7 years old. Small for her age, with 2 careful braids and butterfly clips her father learned to fasten with his clumsy mechanic's fingers. She had a gap where her front tooth used to be, and a habit of watching everything and saying very little the way her father did. Her mother, Elena, had died 3 winters ago. After that, it was just the 2 of them, a man and a girl and a truck and a tiny apartment down the valley where the heat worked when it felt like it. On the days Marcus could not find a sitter, Naomi came to the estate with him after school. The rule was simple. Stay in the back hallway by the service kitchen. Stay quiet. Touch nothing. So Naomi sat on a wooden stool near the pantry with a library book and made herself as small as a 7-year-old can make herself. She was good at it. She had practiced. She was a bright child. Her teacher had sent home a note that said Naomi has a remarkable mind. She sees patterns the other children miss. Marcus framed that note. It hung in their apartment next to a photograph of an old man at a stone chess table in a city park, sleeves rolled up, laughing at something just out of frame. Remember that photograph. It matters later. Now about the chessboard. It sat in Diana Vance's study under a brass gallery lamp. Hand-carved pieces, walnut and bone, imported from Europe. $47,000, she liked to tell people, as if the price were part of the design. Beside it, framed on the wall, hung a yellowed newspaper clipping. Young woman takes collegiate chess title. Diana at 20, smirking over a trophy. 32 years later, she was still that smirk. Chess was her favorite weapon. At dinner parties, she would offer a game to any guest brave enough, then take them apart while narrating their mistakes out loud for the room. You see what she did there? That is exactly how people lose money to me. And then the line she loved most, delivered with a glass raised. No one in this state has ever beaten me at this board. No one ever will. The guests would chuckle and study their shoes. Nobody challenged her. Beating Diana Vance was bad for business. Losing to her was the cost of being invited. Everyone in that valley knew the rule. You let Diana win. But one Tuesday evening in early spring, something small happened in that study. Something nobody was meant to see. Marcus was up a ladder in the hallway, replacing a bulb that had been flickering for a week. Naomi wandered, just a few steps, the way 7-year-olds do when a book gets boring. The study door stood open. The board sat there glowing under its lamp, frozen mid-game in a famous position from a championship match. Except it was wrong. One white knight sat a single square away from where it belonged, and that one square broke the entire logic of the board. Naomi knew that position the way some children know cartoon theme songs. Her father had shown her. She set down her book. She looked over her shoulder. Then she reached up on her toes and slid the knight one square to the left. A soft click of wood on wood, and the board made sense again. "Interesting," said a voice behind her. A silver-haired man stood in the doorway holding a glass of club soda. Calm eyes. A gray suit that did not try too hard. Naomi froze, certain she was in terrible trouble, but the man only looked at the corrected knight. Then at the small girl, the way a jeweler looks at a stone everyone else walked past. "Most people get that knight wrong," he said quietly. "You did not. Who taught you that, my daddy?" she whispered. And then her father's hand was on her shoulder, gentle but quick, steering her back toward the hall, an apology already half out of his mouth. The man in the gray suit did not look angry. He looked, if anything, curious. Marcus did not catch his name that night. He would hear it again soon, spoken with respect, in a room full of people who had none for him. In the truck on the way home, Marcus read his daughter's face the way only a parent can. "You touched something," he said. "It was not a question," Naomi explained. "The knight, the square, the picture that was wrong." And Marcus took a long breath and said the thing he hated saying. "Listen to me, baby. In that house, we do not fix rich people's things unless they ask. We do not get noticed. Head down, hands to ourselves, and we get home safe. You understand me?" "Yes, Daddy." He meant it. He had no plans to be noticed by anyone in that house. He just wanted to do his work, keep his girl fed, and disappear. But 3 weeks later, the invitations went out. Heavy cream cardstock, gold lettering. Vance Capital had crossed $4 billion under management, and Diana Vance was throwing herself a party to make sure the entire mountain knew it. 200 guests, senators, fund managers, a celebrity chef flown in from the coast. All week the house filled with strangers. Florists stacked white roses to the ceiling. Crews strung lights across the lawn like fallen stars, and through all of it, Diana walked the halls rehearsing her toast, pausing each evening at the study to admire the board, the clipping, the younger version of herself, a queen checking her crown. Marcus was ordered to work the party. Every spare hand was needed, which meant Naomi, with nowhere else to go, and a sitter who canceled at the last minute, would be in the back hallway that night on her wooden stool, head down, invisible. That was the plan, anyway. The night of the party, the ballroom glittered like the inside of a jewelry case. 200 of the wealthiest people in the state drank champagne under 3 chandeliers. and Diana Vance moved between them, collecting congratulations like rent. Around 10 o'clock, the caterers ran short of hands. A manager pointed at Marcus. "You, carry these. Go." So the man in the borrowed black vest walked tray after tray through a room of tuxedos and silk, eyes down, exactly the way he had taught his daughter. It worked until the study. The doors stood open for the party, the $47,000 board glowing under its lamp. Marcus only meant to pass it, but there was a smudge on one of the white pieces, a fingerprint catching the light, and 4 years of fixing other people's things made his free hand reach out before his judgment caught up. He wiped it with the cuff of his sleeve. 5 seconds. That was all. "Well, look at this." Diana Vance's voice cut across the room like a fork tapped hard on crystal. She stood in the doorway with a dozen guests behind her, a glass of wine in one hand, a smile already loaded. "The handyman fondling my board. You like it? You know what it costs? More than you will see in 5 years." Laughter, the kind that travels. More guests drifted over, smelling a show, and behind them, in the doorway of the back hall, a small girl in butterfly clips appeared, drawn by the sound of her father's name being used like a punchline. Diana saw her. Of course she saw her. She reached into a small clutch, pulled out a $20 bill, and tossed it at Marcus's feet. The bill spun, floated, landed on the marble between them. "Pick it up," she said. "That is more than your kind earns in a day with your hands. Imagine what your head is worth." Marcus did not move. He looked at the bill, then at the woman, and said nothing at all. The silence stretched just long enough to embarrass somebody. A man near the back, 3 drinks in and looking for sport, broke it. "Careful, Diana. Maybe the man plays." And there it was. The opening Diana Vance never refused. An audience. A target. A stage. She set down her wine and spread her arms like a ringmaster. "You know what? Tonight I am feeling generous. 1 game. The handyman beats me, undefeated in this house for 20 years, and I write him a check for $1 million. She paused for the gasp and got it. He loses. He packs up his things, takes his little girl, and never works on my mountain again. "Mrs. Calloway, please." Marcus said it low, using her family name, the only formal thing he had left to offer. He glanced at Naomi in the doorway, at her wide eyes, at the way her small hands had gone still around her book. "I am asking you, as a father, not in front of my daughter, then your fingers should stay off things that cost more than your life." Marcus looked at his little girl, 7 years old, watching to see what her father was made of. He thought about all the times he had taught her to swallow it, to keep her head down, to get home safe. And he thought about what a child learns when she watches her father get folded up small one too many times. Somewhere deep in his pocket, his fingers found a small wooden king, its crown worn smooth by 2 generations of hands. "Okay," Marcus said. 1 game. The room erupted. Laughter, applause, someone calling for the board. Naomi's face was very serious. Diana grinned. "You hear that, everyone? The handyman accepts. This will not take long. She was right about that part. She just had the winner wrong. Because what nobody in that ballroom knew, not even the woman holding the wine, was where that quiet man had spent every Saturday of his childhood, and who had been waiting there to teach him. While the staff cleared a table in the center of the ballroom and 200 guests pressed in for the show, Marcus Reed stood very still. And in his mind, he was 9 years old again, in a city park 1,000 miles away, watching an old man set up a chessboard with hands like tree roots. Theodore Reed, Marcus's grandfather. Everybody at the stone tables in that old riverside park just called him Pops. For 40 years, Pops had been a legend nobody famous ever heard of. A hotel doorman by trade, a chess player by calling. He spent his Saturdays at those stone tables, taking on all comers for $5 a game. College kids, club players, once a touring master who stopped smiling after 12 moves. Pops beat them all, shook their hands, and gave half of them their money back. He never played a single rated tournament. Entry fees cost money, and money went to rent, to raising the grandson nobody else would raise. The boy with watchful eyes who came to live with him after his own parents could not. The chess world never learned Pops's name. The park knew it. For Pops, the park was enough. Marcus was 5 when Pops first sat him at a board. While other boys learned to throw a ball, Marcus learned that a knight moves like the letter L and thinks like a knife. Every Saturday for years, rain or shine. Pops taught openings the way other grandfathers teach fishing, patiently, with stories. He taught endgames on a board with a missing pawn they replaced with a bottle cap. And he taught one lesson above all the others. The board does not ask your color, son. It does not ask your last name, or your daddy's bank account, or what side of town you sleep on. 64 squares, same pieces for both sides. It is the only fair place I have ever found in this whole country. So when you sit down at a board, you sit down equal to any king. You hear me? By the time Marcus was 12, he was beating everyone at the stone tables except the old man himself. Pops studied his grandson across the board one autumn afternoon and saw something that made his eyes shine. "You are going to be better than me, boy," he said. "Do not tell anybody yet." That winter, Pops's heart began to fail. The last Saturday, he was too weak for the park, so they set the old board on his hospital blanket. Pops could barely lift the pieces. He played anyway. Halfway through, he stopped, picked up his white king, the one with the crown worn smooth from 40 years of his thumb, and folded it into his grandson's palm. "Listen to me now," he whispered. "One day somebody is going to look at you and see nothing but a poor man with rough hands. They will laugh before you ever touch a piece. Do not argue. Do not shout. You let the board speak." The board never lies. He died on a Tuesday. Marcus was 12 years old. He did not cry at the funeral. He went to the park instead, sat at the empty stone table, and played both sides of his grandfather's favorite game until the street lights came on. After that, the game went quiet, then it went private. A second-hand laptop, free chess sites, a username that gave nothing away. He played at night, the screen brightness turned low. He studied grandmaster games the way some people study scripture, replaying them move by move until the patterns lived in his hands. He grew up. He became a man who fixed things. He met Elena, married her, lost her. He became a father. And through all of it, late at night when Naomi was asleep, he still played. By the time he reached his 30s, his online rating sat deep in master territory. Strong club players quietly avoided him, and he had developed a signature. He hunted aggressive players, the ones who attacked too early, who grabbed at every pawn, who chased their queen across the board like a bully chasing a smaller kid's lunch money. He had built a private collection of traps for exactly that kind of player. He could smell arrogance through a screen. He had never told Elena, not really. He had never told Naomi the whole of it. Chess was the one room in the world where his grandfather was still alive, still laughing, sleeves rolled up at a stone table. He was not ready to share that room with just anybody. Now, in a mountain ballroom, a crowd of strangers laughed at the handyman, and a woman worth $4 billion cracked her knuckles over a board that cost more than his truck. Marcus pulled out the chair and sat down. Under the table, his thumb traced the worn crown of a wooden king. Somebody is going to look at you and see nothing but a poor man with rough hands. "Okay, Pops," he thought. Let the board speak. They set the table in the center of the ballroom beneath the largest chandelier. Diana insisted on that. If she was going to teach the help a lesson, the whole mountain was going to watch her do it. 2 staff members carried the board from the study like pallbearers. Phones came out everywhere. Dozens of them, raised over shoulders, little red recording lights blinking like watching eyes. A guest opened a live stream on his phone. 40 viewers, then 200, then more. Remember those phones. They matter later. As Diana rolled up her sleeves, the silver-haired man in the quiet gray suit stepped out of the crowd. "Diana," he said, "if there is real money on this, you will want a neutral referee, Daniel." Diana lit up. "Everyone, this is Daniel Hayes. Grandmaster Daniel Hayes, the genuine article, ranked among the best in the country back in his day. Perfect. Now nobody can say I did not beat the handyman fairly." Marcus looked up and recognized the calm eyes at once. The man from the study door, the one who had asked his daughter who taught her. Hayes gave no sign they had ever met. He simply took a position beside the table and asked, in a voice that carried to every corner of the room, "State the terms, Diana." Clearly, for everyone, Diana obliged, loving every syllable. $1 million to the handyman if he wins. If he loses, he and his daughter are gone from my property tonight, and he never works in this valley again. Witnessed, Hayes said. And 200 phones witnessed it too. Diana dropped into her chair and spun the board toward herself. I play white. I always play white, she smirked across the table. First lesson, free of charge. White moves first. That means I attack. You suffer. Marcus said nothing. He centered his pieces one by one, the way Pops had taught him. Touch each soldier before the battle. Know where everyone lives. Move one. Diana shoved her king's pawn forward 2 squares, hard enough to rattle the row behind it. The opening of a person announcing herself. A few guests applauded, actually applauded, as if pushing a pawn deserved a medal. Marcus answered before the applause faded. Pawn to meet pawn. Center against center, the oldest reply in the book. 3 seconds, maybe less. Fast hands, Diana said. Fast hands lose fast games. Move 2. Out came the queen. Diana swung her most powerful piece into the open early, sliding her toward the man's king's side, eyeing the weakest square on the whole board, the one beside the black king that only the king itself defends. It was a bar fight move. A 4-move checkmate attempt. The kind of cheap shot that crushes beginners and embarrasses everyone else. Somebody in the crowd who knew the game whispered to his date, "She is going for the scholar's mate. She is trying to end him in 4. Marcus glanced at the queen. Then he did something small and strange. He smiled, not at Diana, at the board. The way you smile at an old friend telling a joke you have heard 100 times. His knight came out, calm as a doorman opening a door, defending the threat and developing a piece in the same breath. 4 seconds. At the edge of the table, Grandmaster Daniel Hayes stopped watching the game and started watching the man. Because Hayes had seen that exact reply 10,000 times, but almost never from amateurs. Amateurs panic when a queen charges at them. They throw pawns in front of her like sandbags. This man had not flinched. His knight did not just defend. It claimed the center and asked the queen a quiet question. And now what? Move 3. Diana developed her bishop, aiming it down the long diagonal at the man's king like a sniper finding a window. 3 moves, she announced to the room, from ending this. She checked her watch with a flourish. Anyone want to call the man a cab? He will be leaving soon. Laughter rippled. In the back hallway, Naomi gripped the doorframe with both small hands. A waitress noticed the little girl alone and quietly came to stand beside her. Then Marcus made his 3rd move, and the room got its first surprise of the night. He pushed a pawn on the far side of the board. A quiet little move that seemed to do nothing at all, except it left another of his pawns sitting alone, undefended, directly in the path of Diana's queen. A free snack, a gift wrapped and ribboned. The whisperer in the crowd groaned. Oh no, he just hung a pawn. He blundered. Diana saw it too. Her grin came back, wide and hungry. You see that, everyone? This is what happens when you let them sit at tables they were not built for. Her hand floated over the queen. I almost feel bad taking it. Daniel Hayes's eyes narrowed, a flicker, gone in half a second. He had seen the pawn too, and unlike everyone else in that ballroom, he had also seen what was waiting behind it. Under the table, Marcus's thumb brushed the worn wooden crown one more time. The trap his grandfather had taught him on a rainy Saturday, the one built for bullies who chase lunch money, was open for business. All it needed now was an arrogant hand on a queen. Diana picked her up. Move 4. The queen took the bait. Diana snatched the undefended pawn and held it up between 2 fingers like a trophy, turning it for the crowd. 1 down, she said. The rest coming soon. Light applause. Someone whistled. What she did not notice, what almost nobody noticed, was where her queen now stood. Deep inside enemy territory, far from home, surrounded by squares that belonged to a quiet man with rough hands. Here is the thing about traps, the way Pops used to explain it at the stone tables. You do not catch a wolf by chasing it. You catch it by making it hungry. You leave meat on the ground, 1 piece at a time, each piece a little deeper into the canyon. The wolf thinks it is winning. The wolf thinks it is the smartest animal in the valley, right up until the moment it turns around and sees how far it walked in, and how high the walls are now. Marcus answered move 4 without hesitation. His second knight stepped out, quiet as the first, and aimed itself at a square 3 moves into the future, though nobody but Hayes could see it yet. In his head, his grandfather's voice kept time like a metronome. Develop with a threat. Make every soldier earn his square. Let the big one eat. Move 5. Diana, feeling generous and untouchable, grabbed a second pawn. This one sat on the man's queen side, and taking it pulled the white queen even further from her king. Like a general wandering away from her army to loot a farmhouse. The crowd loved it. 2 pawns up, the billionaire was winning. Glasses clinked in the back. Anyone keeping score by material would say Diana was ahead. But chess is not scored by material. It is scored by one thing only, the safety of the king, and Marcus's answer to move 5 showed exactly that. His dark-squared bishop slid out along the diagonal and settled onto a square where it stared, unblinking, straight at the white king's front porch. Now count the pieces aimed at Diana's home row. 1 knight, 2 knights, a bishop, and a queen still sitting calmly on her starting square, like a storm that had not yet decided when to land. Diana reached for her glass and found it empty. She signaled a waiter without looking, and the room watched a billionaire wait for her own staff, for the first time anyone could remember. Move 6. For the first time all night, Diana Vance had to think. She stared at the board, and somewhere behind her eyes, an old instinct from her university days woke up and started screaming. Her queen was 2 pawns rich and completely alone. Her knights were still in their stables. Her king stood in the middle of the board, with his coat unbuttoned. And the man's pieces, when had they all gotten out, stood arranged in a pattern she almost recognized. Something from a book she had skimmed 30 years ago. Something with a warning attached. The room noticed the silence. 30 seconds, a minute. The smirk stayed on Diana's face, but it had stopped reaching her eyes. She pressed a knuckle once against her lips. "Taking your time, Diana?" Someone called, friendly. The laugh that followed was thinner than the ones before it. She moved at last, pulling her queen back 1 square, a small retreat dressed up as repositioning, the first backward step of the night. Marcus answered in 3 seconds, castling his king to safety, his rook sliding over like a heavy door bolting shut. Everything tidy, everything connected. At the rope line of spectators, a portfolio manager leaned toward Hayes and whispered, "Daniel, level with me." The man is lucky, right? Hayes did not take his eyes off the board. "Luck moves fast and thinks slow," he said. "That man is doing the opposite." He paused. "I have seen this shape before. At master tournaments, the queen hunt, the quiet development, the patience. He is not defending, gentlemen. He is hurting something." Hurting what? The most expensive piece on the board. Word of that exchange traveled through the crowd the way whispers do, faster than the champagne. People who had been smirking started narrating quietly into their phones. The live stream count rolled past 4,000. In Valley apartments, in barber shops, in dorm rooms across the country, strangers were starting to watch a handyman in a borrowed vest stare down a billionaire. By the back hallway, Naomi had stopped looking scared. She was watching her father's face, that calm, unhurried face, and the waitress beside her, who had a grandfather of her own once, felt the hair rise on her arms without knowing why. Diana rolled her shoulders and forced the grin back up. "Cute," she said. "You have got some moves. I will give you that. Learn those at a community center?" She leaned in, lowering her voice so only the first row could hear. "Enjoy it while it lasts. People like me do not lose to people like you. The world does not allow it." Marcus looked up from the board. For the first time since sitting down, he met her eyes and held them. "My grandfather used to say, 'The board does not ask your color, ma'am. He does not ask your bank account either.'" He nodded at the position between them. "It is your move." Somewhere in the crowd, a phone zoomed in on Diana's face. The clip of what it caught there, the flicker, the doubt, the first crack in 30 years of certainty, would be replayed 11 million times before the week was out. But the moment the internet would never stop talking about, the one that turned a party trick into history, was still 3 moves away. Move 7, the move that changed the room. Marcus reached for his knight, the first one, the doorman, and set it down on a square deep in white territory, directly where Diana's pawn could capture it. Then he folded his rough hands and waited. The crowd gasped. Even the ones who did not play understood a free horse when they saw one. "He is cracking," somebody said. The pressure got him. Diana laughed out loud, relief flooding her face like color returning. "First the pawns, now this." "Thank you," she said, and took the knight, dropping it beside the board with her other trophies. "Daniel," she called. "You were saying something about hurting?" Daniel Hayes stood up. A grandmaster does not stand up at a casual party game. The people who knew that went quiet first, and the silence spread outward from them like ice forming across a pond. Hayes studied the position for a long moment. Then he spoke, loudly enough for every phone to catch it. "Ladies and gentlemen, for the record. That night was not a blunder. It was an invitation. And what you are watching now is a forced checkmate. Calculated, I suspect, from this man's very first move. For 3 full seconds, nobody in the ballroom breathed. Then the room flipped. It happened the way crowds always flip. Not gradually, but all at once, like a sail catching the opposite wind. The guests who had laughed at the $20 bill pressed closer to the table. Phones first. The live stream count spun past 40,000. Someone in the comments typed the question that would trend by morning. Who is this guy? The shift had a sound too. The laughter was gone, replaced by the low electric hum of 200 people choosing a new favorite. A waiter set down his tray to watch. The celebrity chef came out of the kitchen, apron still on. Even the string quartet stopped pretending to tune. Near the windows stood a heavy-set man named Gerald Whitmore, head of Whitmore Pension Trust, the single largest investor in Vance Capital. $800 million of teachers and firefighters and their retirements parked in Diana Vance's judgment. Whitmore was not watching the board. He was watching Diana's hands. They had started to tremble, and Diana knew it. That was the cruelest part. She could feel the room leaving her. The same room that had laughed on cue for 20 years. And the old instinct that had built $4 billion told her exactly what to do. "Raise $2 million, she announced, too loud. "Let us make it interesting. $2 million against anything you have. You scared?" The desperation in it embarrassed everyone. A senator studied his shoes. 2 women exchanged a look over their champagne. Marcus did not even glance up from the board. "The bet stands, ma'am. $1 million. A beat. It is still your move." Somewhere behind the crowd, a 7-year-old girl stood up a little straighter. And at the table, Diana Vance looked down at a position that was quietly closing around her king like a fist. 11 minutes. That is how long Diana Vance stared at the board before she touched a piece on move 8. The ballroom waited. 200 guests, 46,000 strangers on a live stream, and one small girl by the back hall, watching her father be something she would remember for the rest of her life. All of them watching a billionaire search for an exit that Daniel Hayes had already announced did not exist. She tried anyway. She shoved a knight back toward her king, a bodyguard arriving late to a fire, and let go of the piece like it had burned her fingers. And now at last the Black Queen moved. All night she had waited on her starting square, the storm that had not decided when to land. Marcus lifted her gently, no slamming. Pops never allowed slamming, and swept her across the whole board in one long diagonal into the heart of White's position. She settled onto her square with a click of wood on wood that everyone heard, because no one was making any other sound at all. "Check," Marcus said quietly. "Look at the White King now, penned into the corner of his own kingdom. His escape squares occupied, not by enemy pieces, but by his own. His rook stood in one corner like furniture too heavy to move. His pawns never advanced, walled him in from the front. The knight that arrived late blocked the last door. Every guard Diana Vance owned had become a wall of her own prison. There was exactly one legal move. Diana made it, sliding her king into the final empty square the way a person backs into the last corner of a burning room. Her hand trembled so badly the piece rocked when she set it down. Move 9. The ballroom seemed to lean in. The chandelier light caught the edge of the board. Somewhere in the silence, you could hear ice melting in abandoned glasses, the hum of phone cameras zooming, the short, shallow breathing of a woman who had bet $1 million on her own superiority. Marcus took 1 second, maybe two. Then his last knight rose, hopped the fence of pawns, the L that thinks like a knife, and landed on the one square from which no answer has ever existed in the entire history of the game. "Checkmate," Marcus said. Not loud, not triumphant. He said it the way his grandfather used to say it at the stone tables, softly, almost kindly, the way you tell somebody news they should have seen coming. 9 moves, the smothered mate, the oldest humiliation in chess, a king buried alive by his own army. Hayes would explain it to reporters later, step by step, the hung pawns that pulled the queen out of position, the knight sacrifice that forced the door open, the quiet developing moves that aimed every black piece at one single square. 9 moves built like 9 sentences of one patient argument. Then Marcus reached into his pocket. He brought out a small wooden king, its crown worn smooth by 40 years of an old man's thumb and a lifetime of his own, and stood it gently beside the board, facing the fallen position. "This is for the man who taught me," he said. "He played at stone tables in a park his whole life, $5 a game. He was better than everyone in this room. Nobody ever knew his name." 3 seconds of absolute silence. Then a single pair of hands began to applaud. Slow, deliberate, ringing off the marble. Grandmaster Daniel Hayes. A heartbeat later the dam broke and the ballroom erupted. Waiters, senators, billionaires' spouses, and 46,000 strangers flooding a live stream chat with one word, typed over and over. King, king, king. And across the floor, breaking every rule she had ever been given, a small girl in butterfly clips ran to her father and threw her arms around his neck. He caught her the way he caught everything, gently, completely, like it was the only job that ever mattered. The cameras caught that too. And Diana Vance sat exactly where she was, alone in the eye of all that applause, staring down at her $47,000 board, at a king smothered by his own soldiers, on a battlefield where, for the first time in her life, her money had counted for absolutely nothing. The applause was still rolling when Diana Vance found her voice. All right. She stood, straightening her jacket, reaching for the old smirk the way a person pats empty pockets for keys. "Fun is over, everyone. Quite a party trick. The man has obviously been coached, but cute, very cute." The applause died. The room watched her. "The bet?" She waved a hand. "Come on, be serious. Nobody hands $1 million to the handyman over a board game. It was a joke." Everybody understood it was a joke. Nobody laughed. That is the thing about rooms like that. They can smell weakness, because most of the people in them got rich feeding on it. Daniel Hayes spoke first, in the dry tone of a man reading a verdict. "You stated the terms yourself, Diana, clearly, for the room at my request. $1 million, witnessed by 200 guests and recorded, as I understand it, on several dozen phones, including a live stream." He glanced toward the crowd. "How many watching now?" 61,000, somebody answered, and the number landed on Diana like a falling beam. Hayes folded his hands. "You can honor the bet," he said. "Or 61,000 people can watch a $4 billion fund manager explain that her word means nothing the second it costs her something. In your business, Diana, which one is more expensive?" Before she could answer, Gerald Whitmore stepped out of the crowd, and the room rearranged itself around his weight. $800 million, Diana, he said quietly. "That is what my pensioners have riding on your judgment. Tonight I watched your judgment up close. You picked a fight with a working man to feel tall. You missed a trap a grandmaster says was 9 moves deep. And the very first thing you did in front of all of us was try to crawl out of your own word." He buttoned his coat. "My office will call yours Monday." The color drained from Diana's face in real time on 61,000 screens. She grabbed for the only rope she knew. "Daniel, be reasonable. We will handle this privately. My attorneys can draft something. A scholarship for the girl, perhaps." A gesture. "The word you are looking for," Hayes said, "is payment." And then Marcus Reed did something he had never done in 4 years of service. He spoke to his employer without being spoken to. "Mrs. Calloway," he said, using her family name one last time, then correcting himself with a small, level steadiness. "Miss Vance, for 4 years I fixed your house. I fixed your boiler at 6 in the morning so your guests would be warm. You billed me for a vase your guest broke. You called me the handyman for so long. I started to wonder if you had ever once asked my name. His voice did not shake at all. It is Marcus Reed, and that little girl is my daughter, Naomi. We were never beneath you, ma'am. You just needed us to be. Somewhere in the crowd, someone began to clap again. Hayes raised one hand to stop it. Not yet, and the room understood. Naomi was not finished, though, in the way only a 7-year-old can finish a thing. She walked, in front of all those people, to where the $20 bill still lay on the marble. It had been there the whole game, and nobody had dared touch it. She picked it up, smoothed it flat against her small dress, and walked it back to the table. She set it gently on the board, beside the smothered white king. "Keep it," the girl said, looking up at Diana Vance. "Daddy says you do not take money from people who need it more." She paused, frowning, the way children do when they are getting the words exactly right. "But you can keep this. You are going to need it more than we do." She was not being cruel. That was the part that landed hardest. She was 7, and she was only repeating something her father had taught her, and she meant it kindly. The clip of that moment, the bill, the king, the little girl's steady voice, would become one of the most replayed 8 seconds on the internet that year. That night, the guests filed out early. The valet line was quiet, and on 61,000 screens, then 100,000, then 1,000,000, the video kept spreading, carrying the name Marcus Reed up and the name Diana Vance down. By sunrise, the video had 4 million views. By Sunday night, 14 million. The internet, which names everything, named Diana Vance within hours, the 9-move billionaire. It followed her onto cable news, into the group chats of her own employees, onto the floor of the exchange. A financial network played the checkmate clip on a loop beside a graph of her funds' returns. The host did not even have to say anything. He just raised an eyebrow, and 1,000,000 viewers understood. The Monday after the party, Naomi went to school like nothing had happened because her father insisted on it. It did not help. Children she had never spoken to lined the hallway filming her. Her teacher asked if it was really her in the video. Reporters waited by the gates at dismissal. Through all of it, Marcus gave exactly one interview. 2 minutes, local news, his daughter's hand in his. They asked how it felt to humiliate a billionaire. He shook his head. "I did not humiliate anybody," he said. "The board did that. She just could not hear it warning her." That same Monday morning, Whitmore Pension Trust filed notice of full redemption. $800 million out. By Wednesday, 3 more institutional investors followed, because in Diana Vance's business, judgment is the only product she ever really sold. And the whole world had just watched her judgment lose to a handyman in 9 moves. The bet itself never reached a courtroom. It did not need to. Diana's own attorneys laid it out for her plainly, a clearly stated wager, 200 witnesses, dozens of recordings, a grandmaster who had called for the terms on camera. Fighting it would mean months of headlines. Paying it would mean one. She paid. The check arrived at a small apartment down the valley on a Tuesday, the same day of the week Pops had died. Marcus held it in both hands for a long time. Then he seized down at the kitchen table, under the framed note about his daughter's remarkable mind, beside the photograph of an old man laughing at a stone table, and he let himself feel, for the first time in a long time, that something heavy had finally been set down. As for Vance Capital, it did not survive the year. The redemptions became a run. The run became a fire sale. By autumn, the fund that once managed $4 billion was being wound down by lawyers who billed by the hour and did not laugh at anybody's jokes. Diana kept the mansion, barely. She sold the art. She sold the cars. The $47,000 chessboard went to auction, where an anonymous bidder bought it for half its value and donated it, with what can only be called a sense of humor, to an after-school chess club in a working neighborhood 3 valleys over. Nobody ever proved who the bidder was, but Daniel Hayes smiled a particular smile whenever a reporter asked. And here is the part worth slowing down for. Because what Marcus did with that $1 million is the whole reason this story is worth telling at all. Most of it went into something he called the Theodore Reed Foundation, named for a hotel doorman the chess world never knew. It pays for boards, for coaches, and most importantly for tournament entry fees for children from working neighborhoods. The entry fees being the entire point, because talent was never the thing the Reed family lacked. The money for the ticket was. That was the only wall between his grandfather and a name the whole world would have known. The Foundation's first project was 12 new stone chess tables in a riverside park, arranged around the old ones, with a small bronze plaque that reads, "For Pops, the board never lies." And here is a thing that is genuinely true. The kind of true a child can learn from a story like this. Chess is not scored by how many pieces you capture. A player can be ahead in material and still be dead lost. It is scored by one thing only, whether the king is safe. Diana Vance spent her whole life counting the pieces she took from people. She never once checked whether her own king was walled in. That is not just chess. That is a way of living, and it has a cost, and the bill always comes due. 1 year later, a man in his late 30s stood at the side of a tournament hall, watching his daughter play her first rated game. Naomi Reed, 8 years old now, 2 braids, butterfly clips, a gap finally closing where her tooth had been. She had not lost yet that day. In the front row, a silver-haired grandmaster watched too, and clapped the way he had clapped in a ballroom once. First and longest. Daniel Hayes had stayed in their lives. Not as a charity, he was clear about that with every reporter who asked. "I have coached prodigies for 40 years, he told one. "Talent is common. What that family has is rarer. They think in complete plans. The man learned it from his grandfather, at a stone table, one Saturday at a time, and now he is teaching it to his daughter. The chess world owes that old doorman a debt it never paid. The least I can do is help collect a little of it." What Hayes did not say to reporters, what he said only once, quietly, to Marcus, on a porch in the cool mountain evening with Naomi asleep inside, was that in 40 years of tournaments and trophies and brilliant lonely men, he had never met anyone he respected the way he respected a man who would sit down across from a billionaire, win the most watched game of the decade, and then spend the prize on other people's children. "You are the most stubbornly decent person I have ever lost an evening to," Hayes said, and Marcus, who was not used to being seen, looked out at the mountains for a long moment, and then he laughed, the first easy laugh in years, and the two men sat in the kind of comfortable silence that is its own kind of beginning. They were, both of them, men who had spent their lives at quiet boards. They were, it turned out, not very good at being lonely on purpose anymore. Diana Vance heard about it the way people in her position hear about everything, secondhand, too late, and from a distance. The last anyone knew, she was consulting, which is what that world calls it when the phone stops ringing. People who visited her emptied mansion said the study was bare now, except for one thing she refused to throw away, a $20 bill framed behind glass. Whether she kept it as a wound or as a lesson, only she knew. But it is a strange thing to hang on your wall the exact moment your money stopped working, and to have to look at it every single day, while across the valley the man you tried to throw away built something with the very check you swore you would never sign, and was loved for it, openly, by a worthy man and a whole community, in a way you never once managed to be. That contrast, more than any courtroom, was the verdict. On Saturdays, always Saturdays, Marcus takes Naomi to the stone tables and they teach there together. Last month, a small boy with a borrowed coat and watchful eyes sat down across from Naomi. She set up the pieces one by one, touching each soldier before the battle, exactly the way she had been taught, exactly the way her great-grandfather taught a frightened boy a long time ago. Then she picked up a knight and held it where the boy could see it. "This one is my favorite," she said. "It moves like an L and thinks like a knife." The boy grinned. And somewhere you have to believe, an old doorman grinned back. Pops used to say the board was the only fair place he ever found in this country. His grandson is busy building more of them. As for the worn wooden king with the smooth crown, it does not sit in a trophy case. It rides in Marcus Reed's pocket to every tournament, every park, every Saturday. Some inheritances are worth more than $1 million, and the little girl who picked a $20 bill up off a marble floor and handed it back. She is winning tournaments now. But ask her what chess is really about, and she will tell you what her father told her, what his grandfather told him on 64 squares, where a king and a handyman sit down exactly equal. The board never lies, it just waits for your move.